Hello there. Welcome to Frames Bar. What can I get you? I'm gonna have one of these. They're really quite good. It's very dark here right now because it's late at night, and I don't have the stamina to start messing around with ring lights and stuff. So no camera in this one. Sorry about that. But I really wanted to make a video talking about some of the very interesting things that have been happening in the world of Tekken this week. And I want to start with the phenomenon known as Haradas Bar. I said in a recent video of mine that like a dream that I have is to get to sit down in an actual real world scenario, like having a drink in a bar with Harada or Murray or both of them. And I want to ask them questions about Tekken and the way it's being designed and balanced and so on, you know, in a context that isn't created for social media, that isn't about publicity or posturing. And then all of a sudden, Harada has a bar and he's doing exactly that in almost like a podcast format. So I guess now my dream is to get to go to that bar. I hope I haven't burned all of my chances at an invitation. But in the latest episode of Haradas Bar, he talks specifically about balance and DLC characters and tier lists, the kinds of things that I have been talking about a lot on my channel for the last year and a half, basically since Leroy was released. So it was a very fascinating video to me, but after I finished watching it, I felt the need to make a joke about it, some sort of comment, so I created in Microsoft Paint the shitty image that you're looking at right now, and I made a joke on my community page, and I hope it was obvious that it was a joke because, you know, I mean, the hint was that it was on the YouTube community page, which is a joke in itself. You know, it's shitty Twitter that nobody cares about. But I had a comment on that post that said, you know, we finally get an earnest, honest communication on balance from the developers, and you just piss and shit on it. You're so bitter. Why don't you go and have a circle jerk with the main man? Which was a funny thing to say. Maybe I will. But it made me want to make a video talking about why I made that joke and how I felt about that episode. I have a lot of like mixed feelings about it, right? So when Harada gets onto the topic of balance, you can watch this with subtitles on YouTube, by the way. He starts by saying that Leroy and Fakum Lam were bugged. And a lot of people speculated that this was a mistranslation of broken, but no, he actually says bugged in Japanese. He says something like, 俺らの調子ではなく、バグなんすよ. Meaning, you know, something along the lines of it had nothing to do with our adjustments, it was bugs. And the people sitting in the bar with Harada go, oh, interesting, go on. And I mean, the part that was frustrating for me is that, for example, if I were sitting in that bar, and I hope this doesn't sound self-aggrandizing, I'm not saying that, you know, this would be better content if I were a part of it, but if I were there, I would be like, what do you mean? Please elaborate. That might be like the most interesting thing you've ever said. Please explain what you mean, because it sounded a lot like what he meant was that the entire issue with Leroy and Fakum Lam was that they were buggy. And it had nothing to do, I mean, this is literally what he said. It had nothing to do with their chose, their adjustments, their balancing of the characters. So does that mean that you think that the bugs, I mean, Fakum Lam was pretty buggy. There were some hurtbox issues. I don't think Leroy was all that buggy. There were some issues, of course, but if you resolve the bugs related to those characters, are they now completely and perfectly balanced and there's no other issue with them? And if that's the case, when you released the latest balance patch, why did you nerf Fakum Lam super hard, even though you've already, you know, resolved most of those issues? It's somewhere where we really needed Harada to elaborate and go into details about exactly what he meant, and that was kind of my joke with the video, because he's sitting there with a lot of people who obviously kind of look up to him, and he calls one of them, I think his name is like Genya, and he goes, Genya-kun, And kun is a version of san. It's, I guess, an honorific or whatever in Japanese. When you talk to somebody, you usually add something at the end of their name. And there are a lot of like social rules for how you go about that. But kun is something that you use either when you're talking to somebody that you have a very close and intimate relationship with, that you're quite fond of, or somebody who is clearly below you in an established power dynamic. So for example, in the company where I work, people who have been there longer than me and are older than me, or have a higher position in the company than me, are comfortable referring to me as my name, Kun. So it's kind of obvious that, Harada is a very he's a very, high up and respected person in this world of gaming. And the people who are sitting there are very interested in listening to what he has to say, but they're not going to question and press him to elaborate on some of these things. And that was the big frustrating part for me, because he kind of brushes the Fuckum Lam Leroy thing aside, saying something like it had nothing to do with balancing, had to do with bugs. And then he starts talking about balance in general. He moves on to talking about tournaments, for example, and saying like, the best thing he said in the entire video that I agree with 100%, that I was so glad to hear him say, and I think I've been saying something similar, I hope, in my videos, going back a long time, that it doesn't matter how good you are at Tekken. If you are a paying customer and you're part of this community, whether you're a complete beginner or a high-level pro, you are a paying customer, and your feelings and your opinion matters and should be taken into consideration. And I completely agree with that. I think it's the right way to look at it. But then he starts talking about how people are very emotional about balance. They watch tournaments and they see, oh, my character that I always play and don't win with doesn't appear in tournaments, so it confirms my suspicion that this character is shit, and they get very emotional. There's this connection between, people's feelings, emotions about the game, and then they sort of use tournaments, as a reference for that. And then he also talks about statistics and how he has all of this information. I think they call it the Yamino Data, the data of darkness, or the cursed data that he has right there, that for some reason he doesn't feel comfortable publishing. That has, like, I think as far as Harada sees it, the actual truth about what characters are strong and what characters are weak. But I also felt frustrated about the fact that Harada talked about tournaments, he talked about this data, but I didn't feel he gave a clear opinion of, which one is more important, what should you take into account. Is it the emotions of the players? Is it the tournament results or representation in tournaments? Is it this dark data that you're hiding? Are you using a mix of all of it? And which one do you think is more important, and so on. And it's another point where I would really have liked it so very much if somebody asked him some questions and pressed him to elaborate on some of these things, but that didn't happen. And so, it's one of those things where you just wish that you could be there. I guess when you're in a movie theater and you're I mean, I don't do this, but people scream at the screen. They say, don't do that, or go in there, or do this, or whatever, because the frustration builds up. That's the kind of feeling that I got watching this video. I'm like, I would have loved for you to talk a bit more about that, because it's so interesting. But there you go. I think Harada said that, I think it's an arbitrary number, but 85% of the Tekken playing audience is the casual audience. I don't think that's the official number that Namco work off of. I just think it's something that Harada said. But, how they feel about the game, then you look at the pros at a very high level, and they are an anomaly. It's almost weird to look at the very best players in the world and balance according to them, because they are so far ahead of your average Tekken player that it's two completely different worlds. And again, I completely agree. It's so very true. But based on all of that, what is your actual philosophy and what are you actually trying to do? That wasn't apparent, and it was frustrating. So I just, God, I wish I could go to Haradas Bar. I mean, I've been there a long time. I speak Japanese as fluently as I speak English, so it would be so cool if I could sit there and maybe take community questions, things that that people send to me, questions that they want to ask, and go there and actually get to get him to go in depth on some of these topics. That would be, a major experience for me. Anyway, it was interesting and it's cool, and I love the idea of a major fighting game developer having a bar where he's gonna have like chats about these things and on these topics. I think it's a great idea. I just hope that it was a bit more of a conversation and a little bit less of a lecture. And if you think that's very vitriolic and I'm being too critical, then I'm sorry, but I make fun of everything, including myself. Another thing I just wanted to add before I leave this topic, he talked about representation. He said that the entire problem with Leroy was bugs, not the balancing of the balancing team. And then he talked about the importance that tournament representation has on the emotions and perceptions of the player base, but he didn't say a single thing about Evo Japan 2019. And, that would have been the question to ask in that context and scenario on that topic, so to speak. The other thing that was interesting about Harada's data was that, he has these actual numbers on what characters win the most, and apparently they are not the same numbers that we see on the match screen before an online match starts. Apparently the data that they have at Namco is predictably more sophisticated, and the most successful character online right now is Gonryu. And we looked at some data on my channel recently, and Gonryu is currently the least played character in the entire game, but apparently when he is played, he is the most successful. And I think those two things might be connected. You don't see him very often. People aren't really prepared for the matchup, and so he tends to be successful because of that. But a lot of it definitely has to do with the fact that Gonryu is a fantastic character. So I spent an hour in practice mode today just messing around, looking at frame data with Gonryu in practice mode. And this is definitely a sleeper character and one of the better characters in the entire game. I really believe that, looking at the launchers and the lows that he has and so on. There are so many things. Maybe I'll do a separate video on how Gonryu is amazingly underrated, but this is one of the better characters in the game. So if you're looking to pick up something underplayed and very powerful, definitely check him out. The other sort of big topic that I wanted to get to, and man, I was sitting in under my lunch tree in the park, which is a real place and a real thing. People were asking me on a video recently, reading about this, and I laughed out loud. So hard that the other people in the park left because they were like worried about me. But all of a sudden, Namco started actually banning people. Yesterday, this happened. And it was apparently related specifically to the hacking or getting early access to Lydia before she was supposed to be in the game. And I'm famously bad at these technical aspects of how the game works. I've never been into my own game files. I've never installed a mod in Tekken 7. I know nothing about this, but apparently you can sort of, when a DLC character is in the data of the game but not officially released, you can manipulate things in some way so that you can play the character before they're supposed to be released, right? And people who had demonstrably done that got a temporary ban, and I saw some screenshots saying that this ban will be lifted on April 27th, so I'm guessing it's like a 1-week temporary ban that they got for violating the terms of service. And first of all, I think it's completely fair that if a DLC character comes out and you're playing it before it should be in the game, then you should be penalized in some way. But what was so funny about it, two things. The first one was that the entire issue with the Lydia thing and the entire issue with save scumming and with hacking in general is that all of these game files, as I've understood it, are local on your computer, and so you can manipulate them to change your rank or avoid being demoted or give yourself DLC characters early, but apparently this ban also was saved locally in the computers of the players, meaning that someone who knows how to give themselves early access to Lydia obviously also knows how to go in and just remove the ban that they received. So it's a very strange solution to this problem, and I think it highlights, as incompetent as I am when it comes to this infrastructure issue that Tekken 7 has, this entire thing of having all the data locally in the devices of the players and not dedicated servers and databases where you can store, the actual leaderboards for the game and so on. And I mean, I think this situation has been bad enough at this point. I mean, I'm completely considering going back to PS4, just dropping PC, because on PS4 this doesn't happen. And even though the matchmaking is slightly worse and slower, it makes for a better experience in my opinion. We'll see what happens, but I hope it's been bad enough that when the next Tekken game comes out, this whole local file thing doesn't go on anymore. I think that would be very, very good for the game. And then the point where I was laughing so loud that people started, walking away from me, was like a person, I guess, tweeted or posted somewhere on social media that I cheated and I didn't get banned. And Michael Murray, like, out of nowhere, replied to him and said, "I don't believe you." I don't believe that you cheated and didn't get banned, which is just so funny. But then he was like, "Prove it, send like a YouTube link," and apparently the guy eventually did, and I don't know if he got banned for it. I don't condone the fact that the guy was cheating, but the fact that he actually sent proof to the developers that he was a cheater so that they could ban him makes him a funny guy. And I think that was pretty cool. But I don't think hacking or cheating or save scumming or even minor manipulation of the data is cool in any way. I think modding basically is where I draw the line personally, but who knows? But I thought that was funny. So for the first time, we've had actual, bans in Tekken, but because of the way that the game is set up, not only do they not matter much, they can be erased using the exact same methods that were used to create or apply those cheats in the first place. Really, really interesting. But I hope it means that at least for a week now, a lot of people who like Lydia and who play Lydia because they got her early won't be playing. So when I go online on PC, maybe I'll see fewer Lydias, and it will make for a better online experience. I haven't made a video with like my verdict on Lydia. I mean, I don't know if anybody gives a shit what I think, but I think even though she's not, definitely not in the same vein as Leroy or Fuckum Lam, I do think she is a frustrating character to play against. I'll put it like that, and maybe I'll elaborate in another video. I know I kind of rambled in this one. I'm just sitting here on my futon, cross-legged, having a drink. I usually have, some notes to go by or whatever, but kind of riffed in this one, and hopefully it wasn't a terrible watching experience. But thank you so much for watching it and for being here. And let me know what you think in the comments. And when I say that, I am genuinely interested. I read all of your comments, and honestly, reading them is like one of the main objectives of doing this whole YouTube thing in the first place. It's so funny. That community post where I made, my own bar or whatever, getting those funny, like thoughtful comments is it's hilarious to me. And I sit around laughing like an asshole reading them, to the point where people are, like afraid to be around me. But thank you so very much again, and I'll see you guys again very soon. I did a video guide on Bob recently, where I tried to do like a loose kind of format, a guide for Bob. And even though it didn't explode and become a huge video, I actually really enjoyed making it, and I enjoyed the way it came out. So I'm going to do similar video guides on the other characters that I play. And I think the next one is going to be Zafina, she's the character that I'm playing the most right now. So that's what's in the pipeline. Feel free to stick around if that sounds interesting. But thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.